You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 18th of March. Social workers knew about Asian men and drugs, Old Bailey hears. Bristol City Council spends £23,000 to cover up bad fostering. Man was denied job just for being a Christian. 2012 Islamisation of France and Britain's future. Catholic charities refusing to accept donations of food containing pork. Car attack on mayor who removed pork alternative from school menu. Group marriage next on gay agenda. Wisconsin, USA white privileged students. Feds spend $1.5 million to study why lesbians are fat. Thought for the day, the communist holocaust, how many millions have died? And finally, spring or autumn or what? UK news. Social workers knew about Asian men and drugs, Old Bailey hears. From the Oxford Mail on the Oxford grooming and child exploitation case, we learn the Old Bailey was told 9 out of 10 social workers caring for young teenage girls knew they were drinking and taking drugs with Asian men. A support worker who worked at the school for 10 years said it was mo this, mo that. It was like he had a hold on her and she had a hold on him. The support worker described the girl as self-destructive, unsettled, and said she had major social and learning difficulties. Reading a statement, prosecutor Neil Moore said when she absconded she would take younger students with her. Girl 5 would receive a call on her mobile phone and she'd go around the school gathering younger female students. All these girls were ignorant and naive. They were highly vulnerable girls. The support worker said she was very easily led. At times she was not even on this planet. All 9 defendants deny all charges against them. The trial continues. World at 8 says, through gritted teeth, here we have some of the old cherries, vulnerable girls. It seems to be an excuse or reason to abuse them. We know this happens and has been happening for years. It hasn't been made clear whether all these victims were from care homes or living at home and attending a school, and I can't find the name of the school or schools attended by the victims. But with most of our schools having a heavy input of Muslim Asians, there's always a prime groomer, usually someone of their own age, who pimps them out to older relations and friends. Why don't the courts and the social workers admit it is primarily a Muslim cultural crime and is endemic now throughout England? The more Muslim immigrants we let in, the more this will continue, especially with the stupid, politically correct attitude of our authorities. The jury was told that sometimes these men had urinated on the girls, who were raped vaginally, orally and anally. Some of them were as young as 11 years old. Bristol City Council spends £23,000 to cover up fostering 4-year-old with suspected paedophile. The Daily Mail updates an earlier Telegraph story where Bristol City Council spent £23,000 of taxpayers' money in a failed attempt to obtain a High Court injunction which could prevent embarrassing details of the case being made public. Bristol City Council placed a 4-year-old in foster care with a suspected paedophile, and social services took nearly 3 weeks to remove the girl from the foster family, despite the father being under suspicion of possessing indecent images of children. The foster father later committed suicide after police seized a laptop away from his home which contained a cache of child abuse images. Despite the little girl and the children of the suspected paedophile being automatically granted media anonymity, the council still tried to obtain a blanket gagging order, and a spokesman for the Bristol City Council still insisted the legal action was only taken to protect the identity of the child. World at 8 says, Bristol City Council can go on and pull the other one. They were just trying to cover their collective backsides. Man was denied job just for being a Christian. The Christian Institute reported graphic designer Jamie Haxby applied for a job at Prested Hall, a country house hotel near Colchester, to assist with the hotel's marketing and promotion. He claims his interview was terminated early simply because he was a Christian and because some of the hotel staff are atheists who wouldn't work with a committed Christian. Mr Haxby has tried to resolve his dispute with the hotel, but they have ignored his approaches and now the matter is with an employment tribunal. According to Mr Haxby's claim form submitted to the Employment Tribunal, he was interviewed for the job on the 4th of December by a Seeley Parker. He says that during the job interview he was asked whether he was a Christian and he said yes. As Miss Parker flicked through his portfolio, she noticed that it contained work done for churches and other Christian groups. She said he was clearly a committed Christian and remarked that she and other people on her team were atheists. She said they could never work with a committed Christian and apologised for wasting Mr Haxby's time. World says, "This sounds like a bad joke. I would say, has this country gone so far down the road of Marxism that employers are anti-religious, but of course we all know that this hotel would, and probably does, employ immigrants of varying religions, obviously though not Christian. Disgusting, and should be given TV time as an investigation." European news. 2012 Islamisation of France and Britain's future. Gatestone Institute reports France has an estimated 6.5 million Muslims, the largest Muslim population in the EU. In January 2012, new citizenship rules required new citizens to pass exams on French culture and history, prove French language skills are equivalent to a 15-year-old native speaker's, pledge allegiance to French values. World Today states British culture and history would be good. English language skills even better. But British values? Does the British majority have any real values any longer? In February 2012, Qatar announced a €50 million investment in French suburbs. Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, subscribes to the ultra-conservative Wahhabi sect of Islam. The banlieue suburbs are already being exploited by Islamist preachers from countries such as Morocco and Turkey, which are leveraging the social marginalisation of Muslim immigrants in France to create separate Islamic societies ruled by Islamic Sharia law. What's new there? The Qataris, Saudis and other oil sheiks and gangsters have been buying up London and the rest of Britain for donkey's years. A recent French documentary by France 2 Television on February the 16th revealed that all of the slaughterhouses in the Greater Paris metropolitan area are now producing all of their meat in accordance with Islamic Sharia law. It is also alleged that much of the halal meat is not labelled as such and is entering the general food chain. In the 1980s, 20% of New Zealand abattoirs was halal. By 2006, 95% of New Zealand and many Australian abattoirs are halal. Tesco and Carrefour realise that they have millions of customers in the UK and France who may ditch their local halal retailers if the price is right. In 2010, stories began to surface on the extent that halal is being served to the British public without their knowledge. In 2013, we're treated to stories of councils, ministers and industry apologising to those of the Islamic faith because they were fed non-halal food, while those of us who care are fed halal without a thought to our beliefs and welfare. Besides this, presenter misses a nice juicy steak or bit of lamb. You just try to find a fresh steak that will run red when cooked. Catholic charities refusing to accept donations of food containing pork, according to Marine Le Pen. Thanks to Sheridine Zakalwe of Islam vs Europe for the translation of this article from Le Point, France. Marine Le Pen, president of the Front National, said on Monday that French society was retreating in the face of the demands of an Islamic fundamentalism, citing a refusal by NGOs to accept donations of food that contained pork. According to her, French society is retreating. French leaders are retreating in the face of the demands of this fundamentalism. When we see that our company, Air France, no longer has pork in its meals, that more and more school canteens no longer offer pork in the meals, that it's the same with government canteens. The humanitarian associations like Restaurant de Coeur and Secours Catholique refuse donations of products that contain pork. Aren't we just submitting to the demands of the greatest extremists? Asked the leader of the Front National. Our World Today European correspondent commented, "I regularly donate to the Secours Catholique and will be donating pork products next time on the advice of a fellow patriot. If they refuse it, they can get stuffed, as they won't be getting any more stuff from me. I also donate clothes and other items." Car attack on mayor who removed pork alternative from school menu. Sheridan Inzaghawi of Islam vs Europe also provided this SudQuest piece on the decision of Benoit Gazans, mayor of Avea in Aquitaine, to no longer offer a substitute dish when pork is served in the school canteen. The decision provoked numerous reactions and one has been particularly virulent. Mayor Gazans reported to the police individuals entered my property during the night and damaged my vehicle. 2 burst tires and scratches on the bodywork that he considers unacceptable. The mayor said, "They've encroached upon my private life. I don't see why I should continue with my commitment to public life in these conditions. I'll finish my mandate but don't know if I'll stand again." However, what he describes as a means of exerting pressure will not cause him to revise his decision. It's a question of economy, of justice and equality for the children. I hear the reactions of the parents and I'm ready to receive them, to listen to them. But damaging my personal property, that is going too far. Group marriage next on gay agenda. Rome, March 2013, livesitenews.com. Boris Dietrich, the homosexual activist called the father of the political movement in favour of Dutch gay marriage, has admitted that group marriages of 3 or more people is the next inevitable logical step in the dismantling of the Western world's traditional marriage laws. In a video interview with YAG, the French online homosexual magazine, Dietrich, a former Dutch MP and homosexualist activist working for Human Rights Watch, related the carefully laid out plan that established first public acceptance, legal civil partnerships, which in turn led inevitably to changing the definition of marriage. World Today states, here we have it, a communist-like spectre of a group of homosexuals who would not produce children and therefore would be no threat to a Marxist Islamic Euro state. Although Islam forbids homosexuality, it will make use of it as it has done in past history. World News. Wisconsin, USA, white privileged students. Kyle Olson of EAG News Education Action Group writes Wisconsin education officials want students to wear white privilege wristbands. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction runs several programs that heavily emphasize racial issues in public schools. One of those programs, an AmeriCorps operation called VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America, may go a bit overboard. It encourages white students to wear a white wristband as a reminder about your white privilege. Vista's webpage also offers a series of suggestions for high school students to become more racially sensitive. They include: wear a white wristband as a reminder about your privilege and as a personal commitment to explain why you wear the wristband. Set aside sections of the day to critically examine how privilege is working. Put a note on your mirror or computer screen as a reminder to think about privilege. World Today can report that since Kyle's went live last week, the pages from the Vista website run by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction have disappeared, to be replaced by disclaimers that reports such as Kyle's are false. Vista is part of AmeriCorps' program. AmeriCorps itself is part of a federal corporation, Corporation for National and Community Service, that is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. It was founded in 1993 by Bill Clinton to bring the full range of domestic community service programs under the umbrella of central organisation, and is wholly supported by Barack Obama. World Today comments, it all sounds a bit like our recent Let's Be a Muslim Day in Lancashire schools. Feds spend $1.5 million to study why lesbians are fat. CNSnews.com reports from the USA the National Institutes of Health has awarded $1.5 million to study biological and social factors for why 3/4 of lesbians are obese and why gay males are not, calling it an issue of high public health significance. It'll be impossible to develop evidence-based preventative interventions unless we first answer basic questions about causal pathways, as we plan to do, they said. Our study has high potential for public health impact, not only for sexual minorities but for heterosexuals, as we seek to uncover how processes of gender socialisation may exacerbate obesity risk in both sexual minority females and heterosexual males. World Today says, I bet it doesn't explain why all the lesbians on TV are young, nubile and dressed to thrill. I guess the producers know that blokes don't want to see fat old broads snogging one another. The lesbians on TV are known as lipstick lesbians, young, gorgeous and often bisexual. We at Radio Britain have the answer. When guys are gay, they want to be seen as female, slim and desirable. When gals are gay, most of them want to be seen as fellas, very short haired trousers and heavy set like a man. Of course you can have varying degrees in both sexes. Where on earth is the need for research? One set watched their weight, the others couldn't care less. It's simples. Thought for the day. The Communist Holocaust. How many millions? My thought for the day is a strange one. It centres on the millions of people that have been killed during the last century, and it makes a sad indictment on man's inhumanity to man. It seems that it is the one thing that humans are good at and what separates us from the animals. We can and have decimated thousands of races in the pursuit of one religious or political ethos after another. However, the ones I will cover today are mainly from the communist ethos, or as they would like to put it, the People's Republics. And anything less like a People's Republic would be hard to find, since the communist Holocaust had managed to kill off more people than that of all the wars of the 20th century combined. The fact that a great proportion of the media do not tell us of these terrible events that are still occurring within certain communist countries is leading to the general chattering classes to believe that the only Holocaust was the one that occurred during the Third Reich and involved the Jewish population. This feeds the anti-nationalist, anti-German and pro-Jewish brigade and has boosted all the funds that have accompanied it in the last 60 years. In October 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution gave birth to the deadliest ideology in human history, communism, and today it enslaves 1/5 of the world's population. We, as free people and nationalists, cannot allow anyone to forget the evils of communism. We cannot allow the atrocities of Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, Ho Chi Minh and Castro to fade into the realms of nothingness, especially when hardly a day goes by when one channel of TV or another is showing the Nazis in all their glory and deadly efficiency. We are never allowed to forget them. We are just encouraged to forget the ones that the establishment want us to forget. I have amassed the following numbers with the help of a website titled orthodoxnet.com and R.J. Rummel. The following estimates represent citizens killed or starved to death by their own communist governments since 1918. These numbers don't include war dead. All numbers are mid-estimates. People's Republic of China 74 million. USSR from 1918 to 1991 60 million. Democratic People's Republic of Korea 4 million. Democratic Kampuchea 3 million. Afghanistan to 75 present 1.5 million. People's Democratic Republic of Ethiopia 1.5 million. Yugoslavia, Mozambique, Socialist Republic of Romania, Bulgaria, People's Republic of Angola, Mongolia, Albania and Cuba all follow with figures in their many thousands of thousands. The Chinese Soviet Republic between 1931 and 1934 accounted for 700,000 deaths by mainly starvation, as were a goodly proportion of the deaths in Kampuchea perpetrated in the name of communism by Pol Pot. Although figures of the war, there were 10 to 20 million Chinese civilians killed during the Second Sino-Japanese War, which could account for the bad feelings that China has towards Japan. Now, during the Second World War, we're never allowed to forget the 6 million Jewish people who perished or were gassed in the camps. Neither should we forget. However, put 6 million against nearly 100 million and you can understand why the media want to forget aspects which don't appeal to the public, because they were not, for the most part, perpetrated on white Europeans. However, a human being is a human being, whatever ethnicity, and still worth counting in the Book of the Dead. Now, during the well-publicised, filmed and written about Third Reich in Germany, there were 6 million civilian deaths, which had been classed as mainly Jewish, but they were not. The Nazis didn't just have it in for the Jews on a racial level, but for the Gypsies and practically anyone who didn't fit the Aryan bill. History, being written by the victors, has chosen to overlook the millions killed in camps who were none Jewish. The Nazis, much like any other totalitarian state, didn't like Jehovah's Witnesses, Freemasons, homosexuals, communists, anti-Nazis and the severely retarded or disabled peoples. The survivor of one concentration camp said where he was there were inmates from 30 different nationalities and all were given patches to wear. With some awful attempt at humour, the Nazis gave the homosexuals a pink triangular patch, and with some they had an initial for the country of their origins within. Very organised and very deadly. Now the single triangles worn were red triangle, political prisoners, liberals, communists, trade unionists, social democrats, socialists, Freemasons and anarchists. The green triangle, professional criminals, convicts, often capos. Blue triangle, foreign forced labourers, immigrants. Purple triangle, Bible students, a term taken from the name of and primarily referring to Jehovah's Witnesses, though a very small number of pacifists and members of other religious organisations were also imprisoned under this classification. Pink triangle, sexual offenders, mostly homosexual men, but rarely rapists, zoophiles and paedophiles. Black triangle, people who were deemed asocial elements and work shy, including Roma gypsies, who were later assigned a brown triangle, the mentally ill, alcoholics, vagrants and beggars, pacifists, conscription registers, prostitutes, some anarchists and drug addicts. The brown triangle, with the Roma gypsies, previously wore the black triangle. Uninverted red triangle, an enemy, POW, spy or a deserter. The double triangles forming the Star of David, a Jewish symbol, were given to the Jews. Buchenwald, 1938. And all the colour groups read out previously were incorporated within these yellow triangles. For example, disabled Jews with a black triangle on a yellow were classed as asocial Jews. So what we have here is a filing system which obviously included many other nationalities and so-called criminals. So we must conclude that a large proportion of the 6 million recorded were made up of other groups of people. Apparently 4 million Jews were gassed in the camps and a further 2 million were killed in their ghettos. This number does not add up. I'm not a Holocaust denier by any means, and millions of people dying, whoever they were, is a terrible event. But if there were, and it is proven, that there were other religions and nationalities in those camps, how do they know which was which when liberated? Many of these poor people died from starvation and disease and were not gassed. The 2 million in the ghettos cannot be disputed as a number, but the figure of 6 million people of the Jewish faith only is a disputable fact. However, my point is that communism is more deadly than fascism. Point proved in stats. The awful thing about this huge number of deaths in mainly communist states is the fact that most of these unfortunates probably welcomed a new state or leader, and certainly in the case of China, with the warlords and even the British with their opium and the starving millions, something had to be done. But communism? Have you noticed that the title for most of these killer states is Democratic and People's Republics? A misnomer if ever there was one. How come it's the name which denotes everything being equal, having something to share and contributing to a national pot, working alongside each other and having no difference, that kills more efficiently than an outwardly fascist state that seeks to have a precious few at the top and a pecking order beneath, where few things belong to the people, that does not kill quite so many in the process of seeking perfection? How come the media, education and the press continually hide the huge amounts of human beings destroyed in the name of Stalinism, Marxism and other extreme forms of the communist ethos? How come our children and older students know all about the Holocaust but nothing about the communist Holocaust? Because, my friends, we live in a socialist democratic society, or what passes for it nowadays, where we are all being stamped and patched with labels just as inmates of those previous camps in the 1940s were, just as the Stalinist camps, Siberian camps and re-education camps in the Far East were labelled. We are all being labelled and sorted. We are, as a race, discouraged from individuality, progress, religious affiliation, familial ties, business ventures and owning land, all of which impedes the progress of a politically correct socialist state. If you think all the main political parties are the same, you are right, or rather left, because they are. Most of them went to the same schools and universities and they all intermarry with their own. They see their future as lying in a multicultural, politically correct melting pot and one which they will live nowhere near. Think why as nationalists we are ignored, blacklisted, vilified at most opportunities and have a large union which tells their members they cannot print anything remotely positive about us. We have local councils and even our own government against us, and of course it goes without saying we have the media and TV whores who run at the sound of our voices. All this imprints on the chattering classes, those who do not know us at all and don't care what happens to their country or even themselves, the establishment who'd rather turn a very blind eye to the obvious. What does that remind you of? Communism in all its lies and prevarications, nothing more and nothing less. On Wednesday I'll talk about immigration and the effect it has or will have on our socialist country that is, and whether any of the awful events above could be repeated. And finally, spring and autumn or what? It was reported in the Telegraph that last week in South Africa an 8-year-old boy married a 61-year-old woman because the ghost of his grandfather told him to do so. Saneli Masilela, an already married mother of 5 Helen Shabangu, feared trouble with the spirit world if the wedding didn't take place and tied the knot at a ceremony in front of 100 guests. Saneli claimed his deceased ancestor told him he was in love with Mrs Shabangu and asked him to marry her on his behalf. The wedding, which was held in the municipality of Tshwane in Gauteng province, reportedly cost £1,000 and had the blessing of Saneli's family and Miss Shabangu's current husband. The marriage means 8-year-old Saneli is now stepfather to Miss Shabangu's 5 children, who are all aged between 27 and 37. Although Saneli was said to be happy to go through with the marriage, it appears the groom already has doubts over the couple's long-term future. "When I'm older I will marry a lady my own age," Saneli apparently told reporters. He added he still planned to go to school and study hard. This presenter says, "I've heard of spring and autumn, but this really is very odd. I can't think of anyone around my age being married to an 8-year-old. It has to be a joke, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Please." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.